Hello, everybody. I hope you all are having a good night or day, whatever it is for you. Some people might not take too kindly to this video, but it is what it is. So, before I get into how Islam was created from my perspective and the information that I was given, I wanted to talk about something interesting real quick. Baal Shamin or Baal Shamin, also known as Shamayim, the Lord of the Heavens, was a supreme deity and a sky god of pre-Islamic faith in ancient Syria. Well, if you look at their crescent, um, the Catholic churches seem to have odd connections to Islam, even down to the crescent moon symbol. And even in Christianity, if you remember correctly, if you look in the Revelations, the woman was standing on the moon clothed with the sun. Some of these symbols reach back to pagan periods when a lot of this stuff was mixed up. Now, am I saying exactly where these came from? No. What I'm saying is you're looking at a lot of the same symbols that are reused over and over, which make me think something is going on. This was the symbol of not just Islam, but Baal, who was the chief pagan god of the Canaanites. Here's the image for you all to view. You have the crescent pagan carving of the solar deity, Baal Hadad, right? The one I was just telling you about. And you have the crescent moon in Mecca. Well, the reason this is interesting about Ben Hadad and the god of Syria is because if you look at this, they say Israel's been in history for all these years and whatnot, but that's not true because that's an English word. So Israel is a borrowing from Latin, you know what I mean? Which is supposedly they get it from Yis, which is man, Ra, which is to see, and El, which are even Canaanite and Egyptian gods, if you pay attention to that. So, which is an Canaanite god. So I wanted to go deeper into this information that I had found about this man. And this man he had talked about the Catholic Church when he left and talked about some of the symbols and what's going on with some of the stuff. And his name was, he was a Jesuit, Alberto Rivera. Now, keep in mind, I'm just relaying this information to you guys, passing it on. A Jesuit cardinal named Augustine Bia shows us how desperately the Roman Catholics wanted Jerusalem at the end of the 3rd century because of its religious history and its strategic location. The holy city was considered a priceless treasure. A scheme had to be developed to make Jerusalem a Roman Catholic city. A great untapped source of manpower that could do its job was the children of Ishmael. So early Christians went everywhere with the gospel, setting up small churches, but they met heavy opposition. Both the Jews and Roman government persecuted the believers in Christ to stop their spread. Now, before I keep going further, when I do history, the only person that they have found crucified was a man named Yohanan. And this man was preaching at the same exact time and was a prominent figure in society. The only real evidence they have of anybody ever really even preaching was John the Baptist. And everybody that recorded everything that came after that was in Greek. They were not writing in Hebrew. It was Greek and Aramaic at the time. Just want to put that out there. What I believe happened is this man was becoming famous. Even Josephus talked about this. And the Caesar at the time did not like this and did not want an uprising. And so he had him executed, just like in all these written history and texts. It's outside of the Bible about this man. But the Jews rebelled against Rome in 70 AD. Roman armies under General Titus smashed Jerusalem and destroyed the great Jewish temple, which was at the heart of the Jewish worship. So if you look at a lot of these symbols in the apocalyptic texts in the Greek or whatever, a lot of this stuff is talking about Rome. It's calling Rome the beast, so to speak. On this holy place where the temple once stood, the Dome of the Rock Mosque stands today as Islam's second most holy place. Sweeping changes were in the wind. Corruption, apathy, greed, cruelty, perversion, and rebellion were eating at the Roman Empire, and it was ready to collapse. The persecution against Christians was useless as they continued to lay down their lives for the gospel of Christ. You guys heard me say in one of my videos a long time ago that I've deleted that I'm here for the lambs, so to speak, the people who were slaughtered, all these people in history who keep getting bulldozed by these lying empires, destructive empires. The only way Satan could stop this thrust was to create a counterfeit Christian religion to destroy the work of God. The solution was in Rome. Their religion had to come from ancient Babylon, and all it needed was a facelift. This didn't happen overnight, but began in the writing of the early church fathers. It was their writings that a new religion would take shape. The statue of Jupiter in Rome was eventually called Saint Peter, and the statue of Venus was changed to the Virgin Mary. The site chosen for its headquarters was on the 7 hills called the Vaticanus, the place of the diving serpent where the satanic temple of Janus stood. The great counterfeit religion was Roman Catholicism, called Mystery Babylon the Great, mother of harlots, the abomination of the earth. She was raised to block the gospel, slaughter the believers in this man, and establish religions, create wars, and to make nations drunk with the wine of her anger and wrath, so to speak. 3 major religions have one thing in common. Each has a holy place where they look for guidance. Roman Catholicism looks to the Vatican as the holy city. The Jews look to the Wailing Wall in Jerusalem, and the Muslims look to Mecca as their holy city. Each group believes that they will receive certain types of blessings for the rest of their lives for visiting their holy place. In the beginning, Arab visitors would bring gifts to the house of God, and the keepers of the Kaaba were gracious to all who came, who bought their idols, and not wanting to offend these people, their idols were placed inside the sanctuary. It is said the Jews looked upon the Kaaba as an outlying tabernacle of the Lord with veneration until it became polluted with idols. Many years later, Abd al-Muttalib was given visions telling him where to find this well and its treasure. He became the hero of Mecca. He was destined to become the grandfather of Muhammad. Before this time, Augustine became Bishop of North Africa and was effective in winning Arabs to Roman Catholicism. They were basically trying to create a new religion to destroy these new people that were following this man. We'll call him Christ for now. And they were destroying Jewish people because they wouldn't follow along with the Roman traditions. Before this time, Augustine became the Bishop of North Africa and was effective in winning Arabs to the Roman Catholicism, including whole tribes. It was among these Arab converts to Catholicism that the concept of looking for an Arab prophet developed. Muhammad's father died from illness, and sons born to great Arab families in places like Mecca were sent into the desert to be suckled and weaned, and spent some time in their childhood with Bedouin tribes for training and to avoid plagues in the cities. After his mother and grandfather also died, Muhammad was with his uncle when Roman Catholic monk learned of his identity and said, "Take your brother's son back to his country and guard him against the Jews. For by God, if they see him and know of him that which I know, they will construe evil against him. Great things are in store for this brother's son of yours." The Roman Catholic monk had fanned the flames for future Jewish persecutions in the hands of the followers of Muhammad. The Vatican desperately wanted Jerusalem because of its religious significance, but was blocked by the Jews. Another problem was the true Christians in North Africa who preached the gospel. Roman Catholicism was growing in power. Roman Catholicism was growing in power, but would not tolerate opposition. Somehow, the Vatican had to create a weapon to eliminate both Jews and true Christian believers who refused to accept Roman Catholicism. Looking to North Africa, they saw multitudes of Arabs as a source of manpower to do their dirty work. Some Arabs had become Roman Catholic and could be used in reporting information to the leaders in Rome. Others were used in an underground spy network to carry out Rome's master plan to control the great multitudes of Arabs who rejected Catholicism. When St. Augustine appeared on the scene, he knew what was going on. His monastery served as basis to seek out and destroy Bible manuscripts owned by true Christians. So before I keep going further, Rome has split into 2 parts: Eastern Rome and Western Rome. Western Rome eventually would fall and Eastern Rome would gain in power. But what happened at first was they were fighting back and forth. Eastern Rome wanted new practices, and they felt like the Westerners were pagans, and the Western Romans wanted more traditional traditions in their religion worship. So the Eastern Christians, we'll call them the Polacks or that Slavs, whatever, the Russians, they tried to raise up a nation to fight. So Babylon, which would have been here since the Babylonians have taken over, or Egypt or whatever, if we're going in accordance to time frame of history, starting with the dragon Pharaoh, you're looking at basically a time frame where you had Babylonians, Phoenicians, Hellenistic people, and then Roman pagans. They all mixed into some type of religion at some point, created their own version of it, until we have this beast that we have today. You have Christianity and Islam, which was created by Roman Catholics. The two horns on the last beast, so to speak. The Vatican wanted to create a Messiah for the Arabs, someone they could raise up. Now, when I talk about the revelation, I'm not saying that any of this is for my time period. I'm giving you a roadmap to basically map out what has happened throughout history to show you how it lives out today. I'm going to make a bold statement. A lot of this Hebrew that you guys are reading about and learning about wasn't even around. I don't even know at what time period. I think Hebrews would have been during the Assyrians time period. I really think King David and them were Assyrians. Because if these people broke out of Egypt a long time ago, they may have been Canaanite Egyptians. I believe at some point they would have been ransacked by the Assyrians at first and then the Babylonians. They would have been fighting people throughout history, but Assyria would have taken over and dominated first. The Vatican wanted to create a Messiah for the Arabs, someone they could raise up as a great leader, a man with charisma whom they could train and eventually unite all non-Catholic Arabs behind him, creating a mighty army that will ultimately capture Jerusalem for the Pope. In the Vatican briefing, Cardinal Bia told us this story. A wealthy Arabian lady who was a faithful follower of the Pope played a tremendous part in this drama. She was a widow named Khadijah. She gave her wealth to the church and retired to a convent, but was given an assignment. She was to find a brilliant young man who could be used by the Vatican to create a new religion and become the Messiah of the children of Ishmael. So if you really pay attention to these predominant figures in history, you notice how if any of us as regular human beings try to go warn people, start an institution, or do anything, we're met with opposition and nobody helps us and we're made fun of unless we're following the main religion. But you notice how different people, once they're supported by the Pope and these big religious figures in history, they become famous because they have sponsors, so to speak. They have unlimited wealth and resources. A brilliant young man who could be used by the Vatican to create a new religion and become the Messiah for the children of Ishmael. Khadijah had a cousin named Waraqwa. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, who was also a very faithful Roman Catholic, and the Vatican placed him in a critical role as Muhammad's advisor. He had tremendous influence on Muhammad. Teachers were sent to young Muhammad, and he had intensive training. Muhammad studied the works of St. Augustine, which were prepared for him for his great calling. The Vatican had Catholic Arabs across North Africa spread the story of a great one who was about to rise up among the people and be the chosen one. All this stuff is lining up with history. Like, I'll have people that just say the Quran or Bible says, but then when you go outside of history, you see civilizations, different texts, you see maps of geopolitical regions and cultures and see what actually happened throughout time, and a lot of it makes sense. While Muhammad was prepared, he was told by his enemies were the Jews that the only true Christians were Roman Catholic. He was taught that others were calling themselves Christians were actually wicked imposters and should be destroyed. Many Muslims believe this. Muhammad had begun his reign. While Muhammad was being prepared, he was told that his enemies were the Jews and that the only true Christians were Roman Catholic. He was taught that others calling themselves Christians were actually wicked imposters and should be destroyed. Many Muslims believe this. More us versus them. Muhammad began receiving divine revelations, and his wife's Catholic cousin Waraqwa helped interpret them. This is from many sources throughout history. From this came the Quran. In the 5th year of Muhammad's mission, persecution came against his followers because they refused to worship the idols in the Kaaba. Muhammad instructed some of them to flee to Abyssinia, where Negus, the Roman Catholic king, accepted them because Muhammad's views on the Virgin Mary were so close to the Roman Catholic doctrine. These Muslims received protection from Catholic kings because of Muhammad's revelations. Muhammad later conquered Mecca, which is in written history also, and the Kaaba was cleared of idols. History proves that before Islam came into existence, the Sabians in Arabia worshipped the moon god, who was married to the sun god, which is the same in many different cultures. They gave birth to the three goddesses, the Trinity again, the three, back from ancient Babylonian days, even from before King Nebuchadnezzar, who were worshipped throughout the Arab world as daughters of Allah. An idol excavated at Hazar in Palestine in the 1950s shows Allah sitting on the throne with the crescent moon on his chest, the same crescent moon representing Baal. Muhammad claimed he had a vision from Allah and was told, "You are the messenger of Allah." This began his career as a prophet and received many messages. By the time Muhammad died, this religion of Islam was exploding. The nomadic Arab tribes were joining forces in the name of Allah, his prophets. In their holy book, the Quran, Christ is only regarded as a prophet. If the Pope was representative on earth, then he also must be a prophet of God. This caused the followers of Muhammad to fear and respect the Pope as another holy man. The Vatican helped to finance the building of these massive Islamic armies in exchange for 3 favors: eliminate the Jews and Christians, protect Augustinian monks and Roman Catholics, and conquer Jerusalem for its holiness. The Arab generals had much military success, that they could not be intimidated by the Pope. So basically, once the Pope wanted Jerusalem after Muhammad took it, they wouldn't give it back, which would lead to years of religious fights between the Muslims and the Romans, which would inevitably in the future create Protestants from Martin Luther, which was the beginning of Protestants. Another man you hear me talk about sometimes, but I don't bring up too much, is William Tyndale. He was another one martyred in history for no reason. He was brutally murdered by the Pope because he tried to write down the Greek translation as accurate as possible from the Bible because he believed in righteousness. I did some research and I read a biography on his life, and he was really a righteous man. He was prosecuted by a lot of different people, persecuted and prosecuted by a lot of different people. So back to this. Under Warqa's direction, Muhammad wrote that Abraham offered Ishmael as a sacrifice. The Bible says that Isaac was the sacrifice, but Muhammad removed Isaac's name and asserted Ishmael's name. So they're basically creating lore out of older people's religion, like how I was saying they have done anyway. Even if you look at Hebrew texts and what would be considered Hebrew, these people were running away from the world's religion, and most of the prophets condemned religion. Almost every prophet in that book was murdered because they were condemning the world at the time and their religious sacrifices, killing children, burning children on fire, killing women, raping and molesting children and men for their gods. As a result of this and Muhammad's vision, the faithful Muslims built a mosque, the Dome of the Rock, in Ishmael's honor, on the site of the Jewish temple that was destroyed in 70 AD. This made Jerusalem the second most holy place in Islamic faith. So basically, you're looking at Rome, the dreadful beast that started any of this. They basically will go throughout time murdering and slaughtering people and trying to reshape this religion. And so a lot of people that don't believe me when I say that this stuff is carried on from the beginning, if you look at the Vatican right now, I'm going to show you something. Is the Vatican built on a necropolis? The basilica was located just above the supposed grave of Apostle Peter. Now, you know, they did all this by the statue of Peter, which was Jupiter. Emperor Constantine excavated part of the necropolis to create enough flat land for the foundation of the church. So if you look up what is a necropolis, what is a necropolis? A necropolis, a large designed cemetery with elaborate tomb monuments. The name stems from ancient Greek, literally meaning the city of the dead. But it's not from ancient Greek. The necropolis is the necropolis from Egypt. And this is why you have to be careful, because you can get false information. The necropolis was an Egyptian structure. And what the Egyptians did Egyptians invent necropolis. The necropolis. Ancient Egyptian funerary practices. So before I got a pickup from Google and now I'm not. I believe that is happening for a reason. So now I'm going to show you something. What is the god of necropolis? Anubis. There are several additional epithets for Anubis, including Lord of the Sacred Land, because he controlled the territory around necropolises. This is basically an Egyptian god, another aspect of the Vatican that they carried over from paganism. And pagan is just a simple word for peasant. The Christians adopted this word to attack anybody who believed in other types of gods. So I was just trying to spread a little bit of information. If you actually research some of this stuff about Rome and the Vatican, it'll make you sick to your stomach, and you might not want to be a certain type of religion anymore. That is not my aim here. I just want to open people's eyes and show you that you are. One time, me and my dad was at one of the saints' house. This was years ago. I wasn't even 21 yet. And the brother there was in a coma. He was laying there in his bed, and he was bedridden. He was about to die. And his wife was still fine. She was walking around, taking us through the house, We were saying prayers and stuff. Well, me and my dad were the only ones in the room. And we were visiting him. We were saying goodbye, brother. And I'm not going to say his name, but we were telling him bye and stuff like that. All of a sudden, this man sprang up in a sitting position, screamed, "I don't want to die," and body went back down. That was ultimately the beginning for me, where I started saying, okay, I want to understand some of the stuff and what's really going on. And the more I began to seek and learn and understand, I began to see that a lot of us are torturing ourselves with eternal punishments that were created sometime in the newer age of mankind. If you do not believe me, the name Hell has gotten its origins from Germanic and Scandinavian mythology to the pre-Christian Northern Europeans, just Germanic barbarians, if you will. So, have a beautiful life. And like I said, if you're being tortured by this stuff, or if you have paranoia and anxiety, you should really do research, because you're not the devil. You're just learning how the world works.